Everyone expects you to have all the answers, but who's asking you how you're doing? Who's helping you think through your challenges? Engineer Your Success Insiders is my private podcast designed specifically for you. It's like having a coach in your corner focused on helping you win at work and at home. One story, one insight, one action that you can take, all wrapped up into real coaching insights that you can use. Join at engineeryoursuccessnow.com/insiders.
Success isn't just about what you achieve. It's about living a life that reflects your values and priorities. Welcome to Engineer Your Success, the podcast that helps you lead with intention and live fulfilled.
I want to welcome you to the Engineer Your Success podcast. My name is Dr. James Bryant, your host and guide for designing and living a life where you are winning at work and at home, and I hope that you are having a great week. I have a question for you. What if the key to scaling your business isn't just a better strategy, but a stronger culture? Today's guest, Tim Ernst, is a data-driven HR and organizational development leader with 25 plus years of experience transforming how companies grow significantly without losing their soul. From reducing turnover by 60% to guiding a 5x headcount expansion, Tim brings practical wisdom for building cultures that last. If you're navigating leadership, growth, or retention, this episode is your roadmap to doing it with heart, clarity, and measurable results. Tim, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, James. I really appreciate it.
So let's hop right into it. What would you say is the biggest myth that you hear about workplace culture in the construction industry?
So the biggest myth that we hear, you have to start with the fact that as human beings, it's normal to judge a book by its cover. And when you're in the construction industry, it's really no different. A lot of things that I've heard about a culture in the construction industry is, that's not possible. You're dealing with a different segment of society. How can you possibly have a culture? I love the question. I love the challenge. I've worked in manufacturing. I've worked in healthcare, and I've worked in construction. That's where I'm at now. Are you familiar with the theory of Pygmalion? The theory of Pygmalion says that you are who others perceive you to be. The story behind it is an artist making a sculpture out of clay, falls in love with it. He believes so much in what he's doing, it comes to life. The reason I tell you that story is any organization can have a good, strong culture. Don't judge a book by its cover because you're going to miss one heck of a story if you do. Construction's no different. These are human beings. These are our people. And every human wants to strive to be a better version of themselves. And I think if we are able to put people in a position to strive to be better versions of themselves, you're starting to lay the foundation for a strong culture.
Have a common definition of culture. What would be your definition of culture?
So when I look at culture, for me, it can best be defined in the following way. Shared values, shared norms, shared behaviors that really define an organization's work environment. It also establishes how team members interact with one another within that environment. It influences how individuals make decisions that are designed to impact the overall effectiveness of an organization.
Okay, so I think I've talked about culture from the standpoint it's the lived expression of your vision, mission, and values, not just what you say, but it's actually what you do.
Most companies have a tendency, you walk into a business and have their mission, vision, and value statements. They'll put them in a frame, they'll stick them in the lobby, and you kind of walk through feeling proud of yourself. This is who we are. For me, a good culture starts with a set of core values. The core values are the non-negotiables of your company. It is the filter through which all decisions are made. I've had the privilege of working for some awesome organizations that have great cultures, and everything from how you hire, how you interview, how you evaluate people, how you treat people, how people grow It's all centered around that core values. That core values is a strong foundation for building an effective organizational culture.
It'll be interesting to get your take on what are some of the common core values that the companies that you've been involved with that have great cultures, what are some common threads among those core values?
Dependability. I'm a big believer. If you're early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late. Dependability is mission critical. It allows you to start meetings on times. It allows you to start orientation on times. It tells you a lot, can tell you a lot about the work ethic of an individual. In the construction environment, if a job site, if we start at 7:00, it doesn't mean that you're getting out of your vehicle and meandering over to the Connex to start your day. It means you're at the Connex with your tools ready to go so that at 7:00, we can do our toolbox talk, kick the day off the right way, and then everybody can go to work with the same message. Nobody misses anything. Attitude is a common theme as well. Everybody's going to have a bad day. We're human beings. But used to be this misnomer that, separate your home life and your work life. It's impossible. What I always tell people is the things that are going on at home, you may not be able to control. But if you take and hang them on the hook outside your door before you walk into your office, focus on the things that are going on in the work environment at that time. Two things are going to happen when you leave at the end of the day. Number one, those problems that you walked in with aren't going to seem so large or so insurmountable. And then number two, I'll bet you have a different perspective on how to possibly solve those issues because you've put them to rest for a temporary period of time. And it's not just eating away at your psyche. It's not tearing you apart. So you've got dependability, you've got attitude. Professionalism to me isn't the old misnomer of showing up to work with a suit and tie on. You can be a professional in a construction environment as well. It's how you bring that knowledge, skill, and ability with you when you walk on a job site. One of the things that I always tell people, I've been in HR this is my 30th year. The day I tell you I know it all is the day they're sticking me 6 feet on the ground. I strive to learn every day. I strive to be a better version of who I am every day. And I think that's something that everyone, regardless of where they are in an organization or at what level, they can always learn to do something better. As human beings, we have a tendency to be curious. It's okay to be curious. I think that's part of what makes the world go round. It's said that, God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. And that comes into play when you start talking about professionalism. But in sales, it's always be closing, the ABCs of sales. Well, for me, it's always be growing. Always try to take things the next step, the next level.
Okay. And so a lot of what you're saying about companies that have these good cultures that are supportive of growth, that have dependability, where you're doing things with the right attitude as well. Have you been in situations where you've come into a company, an organization, and the culture needed to be corrected or adjusted? Let's say it needed a culture adjustment.
Call it an enhancement. And, anybody that's been in HR, they kind of get the sense of what I'm about to say. You first walk into an organization and everybody kind of views you as HR. We're the law and legal, we're the hire and fire. And, that's just a component of what I do, but it's not who I am and it's not who the organization that I am a part of is. When I come into a company, I want to get to know as many people as possible. I want to understand what makes them tick. Are they extroverted? Are they introverted? Are they thinkers? Are they feelers? How do they take in information? How do they process information? The other lens that I use is the lens of operations. How does the company function? What is it? What's the three-legged stool that is really kind of the support for that organization? Are they a sales-oriented organization? Are they a customer-driven organization? What makes them tick? And then HR filters in around that and is used to support and enhance that. In the roles that I've been in, you're always on stage. Everybody watches you. Well, how did they handle that? Or why did they handle it that way? I try to be an open book as much as possible. I'm not violating confidentiality, but if people want to know, why did you handle it that way? Or what did you see? Or Why did you interact with that person that way? There has to be a level of transparency there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And speaking of the roles that you've played, let's talk a little bit about your career.
I've been blessed to work for a lot of really good organizations and leaders. If you look at my resume, you're going, man, he's had a lot of jobs. For me, it's been, I wanted to learn about manufacturing, healthcare, food distribution, and now I'm in construction. I've had the benefit of gleaning knowledge and bringing that knowledge with me into the next organization. The company that I was with previously, I remember sitting down with the CEO and he said, it's no doubt that you know HR, but you've never worked in construction. And I just don't know if it's going to gel. Well, he took a chance. About 2 weeks into that job, he calls me one day and says, hey, when you get a chance, would you come by my office? I said, yeah, sure, no problem. I'm out on such and such job site. We're getting ready to set Simon's panels. I'll be back this afternoon and I'll come and see you. And he goes, wait a minute, you're out on a job site? I said, yeah, I want to learn what our guys do and some of the pros and cons of their job and what they like and what they don't like. His next response was, never mind, you'll be fine. And that's why I say I've worked for some really good leaders. You know, when manufacturing, I would go out and work on the assembly line. When I was in healthcare, no, I'm not playing doctor or nurse, but I would spend a lot of time with the healthcare professionals and walk in their shoes. This is something that I did on first shift, I did it on second shift, I did it on third shift. Because the cultures are different from shift to shift. That's something often missed in today's organizations. What you see on one shift is not necessarily the same culture that you see on an off shift. I encourage CEOs and executives to spend time on those off shifts. Walk a mile in those people's moccasins, understand what they go through. Third shifts are very independent. There's usually not a lot of leaders around at the executive level to make decisions. So they kind of fend for themselves. Now, the organizations that are very successful with that also have a very strong communication strategy. They transfer information from first shift to second shift, from second shift to third shift, and from third shift back to first shift. That's what keeps everything floating, operating smoothly on the water.
So, in your experience, what's been the impact you being able to walk a mile in their shoes? What's the feedback you've gotten from the employees?
Everything I do, from how I create policies to how I create training to how I engage with folks, is really at the center of what they do and how they do it. I've had people look at me and say, I didn't think anybody really got it. The biggest compliment I've ever had in my career is, you get it, you understand it. To me, that's important. You know, that's one of the things I really love about being a human resources professional. We are dealing with individuals. Early in my career, when you talk about leadership, if you've got 5 people that report to you, you better have 5 different leadership styles, because each of those individuals is different. And there's some button or lever you're going to push or pull to get the most out of each of those individuals. And the only way you're going to do that is to understand who they are.
No, I totally agree with you. During a previous conversation, we talked about your role where you helped a company grow from 85 to a head count of over 400. So let's talk about that.
So when you go into a construction environment, you do have to have a strategy. And, I remember when I first got hired, this was a company that had a desire to grow. But internally, we'll never get to be this big. And then we pass that number. Well, okay, we'll never get to be this big. And then finally they stopped saying that, because for me, it was challenge accepted. Having a strong culture enables the organization to achieve things that people don't think is possible. There's barriers that are removed. It becomes a team environment. I'm a big believer in growing your own, especially in the construction environment. It used to be a time where you could walk into a construction organization and you'd have people lined up out the door and they all wanted work. Those days are over with. You have to have a grow your own mentality. You have to identify who your high performers are. You have to give them stretch assignments or opportunities to really kind of excel. And you've got to be able to provide training and development that supports that development. This is not a one-size-fits-all approach. And it's not quick. You're not going to snap your fingers and solve this problem over time. What I did within this construction organization, I was there for 8 years. And every day it was a grind. We did everything from apprenticeships to offering training. Our apprentices, Monday through Friday, were in the field working, getting hands-on experience. And then Friday, they were in a classroom learning. Monday, they'd be back out applying what they had learned in the classroom. We were constantly getting feedback from their foreman about, how are they doing? Where were they struggling? What was working? What wasn't working? And we were constantly tweaking our development as we went.
And I think there was some mention of earning best places to work recognition.
So the best places to work recognition was one of those things that I'm very, very proud of. But that's not a Tim accomplishment. And again, this goes back to culture. One of the things that I really appreciated about that opportunity and that honor, and the fact that we won it multiple years in a row, it's your employees, your team members, they're answering questions from a surveyor. And it's everything from your benefits to how you're treated to what type of company you are. You get selected for this award based off of their feedback. The other thing that I really appreciated about it is you get all of this feedback at the end, you go through and you figure out, okay, here's some things that we really need to work on. And having a CEO that gets it, that's engaged, that says, go forth and prosper, my child, do what you need to do, and is there to support you. That's the cherry on top of that organizational culture sundae, I like to say.
If there's a leader listening to this episode, it could be an HR professional, it could be someone that is an owner of a construction company, and they're juggling with this whole concept of rapid growth. They really want to grow. What's the one thing that they can do this week to reinforce or build their culture towards the growth that they want?
The first thing I would tell them is ask themselves the following question. What kind of culture do I have? And what kind of culture do I want? Sit down with your leadership team. Ask them, what is our culture? What culture do we have? What culture do we want? There has to be alignment with that group. Once you get alignment with that group, we have our core values, we have our mission statement, we know where we're going. Follow it. The other thing I'll tell you is get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Organizational culture and growth, it changes all the time. And, you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Realize there may be people in your organization that have been longstanding team members of your organization that aren't going to buy off on the direction the organization's going. Have they outlived their value? And there's going to be hard questions that you're going to ask yourself as it relates to how I take my company from where it is to where it needs to be.
So in that process, that leader is investing their time and energy to get these different cultural elements in place. What's your suggestion for them to measure their return on investment?
So it's okay to engage with outside help, third-party consultants. But one of the things that I really look at is turnover. Turnover is really one of those big levers. When I first started working for a particular construction company, we had 99% turnover. By the time I left, after the awards and the accolades, we were less than 20% turnover, which is unheard of in the construction industry. Turnover for me is a big indicator of what type of culture you have. From an organizational perspective, we made it a focus that we were going to keep our guys busy year round. We weren't going to lay off. We were going to do everything that we could to keep guys busy. We kind of had this formula that we followed. All right, we need to bring in more work. Let's go get more estimators. We're bringing in more work. Now I need to bring in more project managers to manage the projects. Now I need to have more superintendents to help manage multiple projects. Now I need more foremen. Those foremen need crews. And that process was cyclical. And that's just an example for what worked in construction. There are similar examples that work within manufacturing, within healthcare, within distribution. It's a playbook that's repeatable.
Okay. And for someone listening into this episode, and they're like, I really enjoy what Tim is saying. What's the best way for listeners to circle back and connect with you?
So I can give you my email address. I'll even give you my cell phone number. A lot of people won't do that. My email address is going to be my first and last name. So Timothy Ernst, ERNST, at MSN.com. And my cell phone number, 502-758-8780. Am on the East Coast. Please keep that in mind if you are going to call. Now, why do I do that? I really strongly believe in what I do. I really strongly believe in if a company has a healthy culture, the company will grow and be successful. But that culture, the health of that culture is tantamount to the success of that organization.
No, that's beautiful. And I really appreciate you putting yourself out there. We'll include a link to your LinkedIn profile, your email address, and your cell number in the show notes. So before we close, there are two other questions that I like to zero in on. On this podcast, I talk a lot about this whole concept of winning at work and at home. How would you define winning at work and at home?
So winning at work, I think one leads to the other. Anybody that's been out there knows if they have a great day at work, that translates into having a great day at home. The reason that I focus so much on an organizational culture is when you first start working with a culture, you understand some of the big blockers that keep them from being successful, and you spend a lot of time knocking those barriers down. Eventually, those big problems become small opportunities, and it's not one person, it becomes two people, then four people, then eight people. Many hands make light work. Success in a work environment translates to success in the home environment as well. Each one of my kids has a very unique and a different personality. I want to find out what makes them tick. They got some of my strengths, some of my weaknesses, got some of my wife's strengths and some of my wife's weaknesses. And that has translated over into our grandkids as well. All of that stuff translates into what you do at home.
And so the last question before we close is, what's one question that you'd like to ask me?
So in your years of doing this and working with organizations, what do you see is their number one fear when it comes to tackling culture?
I think the first fear is thinking that it's going to be difficult to measure a return on investment if they don't have that key performance indicator, such as turnover or something that they're actually looking at. So that's the first one, that measuring the return on that investment is a little fuzzy.
And KPIs are fairly easy to establish, and it would be specific to the business.
I agree. When you start talking about culture, there is no direct link to, okay, we're going to talk about our mission, vision, and values. We're going to make sure that we're dependable, that we're there on time. Those are all great things. And they're looking at how their company performs. You have to link that to, are we talking about the sales calls that we're having in the organizations? Are we talking about the folks that are in business development? Are we talking about how our engineers are delivering projects? So it's looking at how do you tie that return on investment in culture into the bottom line things that help operate that business.
James, one of the other things that I forgot to mention is accountability. You can't be afraid to have difficult conversations with people, especially when it comes to your culture. Just because you have a healthy culture doesn't mean that you're still not engaging folks. That has to happen because I'm a big believer, if you're green, you grow. If you're ripe, you rot. And I think the more you engage folks, the more opportunities you have to help them grow, be a stronger, better, faster version of themselves.
I think the other fear I've run into is companies believing that they've set their culture at some point in the past and that culture still exists now. Not understanding that it is a living and breathing thing, and you can have a culture of accountability in terms of on your mission and your vision. But if you fail to have those crucial, tough conversations in the moment, your actions are going to create a culture that's not about accountability.
Is your organization getting older? Is it getting younger? Every time you hire someone, your organization is changing.
Yeah, that's true.
And depending upon how quickly you're growing, it can have dramatic impacts on the culture.
Is there one last thing that you would like to leave our audience with?
And what's the best way for people to connect with you?
Don't be afraid. Welcome to the human race, first of all. Second of all, don't let the talk of culture scare you. This is something I've done throughout my career. It's not easy, but is it rewarding? Yes, very. If they have my LinkedIn profile, they can look me up and see where I'm at and what I'm doing.
Tim, thank you again for spending some time with me and with our podcast listening audience. I'm going to end this episode like I end every episode of the Engineer Your Success podcast, and that's this. Many people know what to do. Fewer people know how to do it. And there's a select group of people that follow through and do it, and they're living the life of their dreams. Tim, I want to thank you for being part of that select few.
Thanks, James. I appreciate it.
All right.